Hey guys, so we're continuing our series today talking about my personal Criterion collection. And today we're going to be talking about number 115 in the collection, which is a very interesting historical piece of film history as well. And that's going to be Rififi from Jules Dassin, or Jules Dassin. I'm probably going to say his name wrong this whole time. Whatever. So Rififi, as I said, is an interesting piece of film history because it was directed, or its director, Dassin, when he made this film, was a part of the Hollywood blacklist, where he was outed as a communist and was sort of forced to flee the country, or forced to flee the United States out of fear of being subpoenaed and questioned to court and thrown to jail. And while in Europe, the French film production companies seemed to really love him and kept trying to give him chances. And Rififi was sort of one of his bigger moments there in France, made on a tiny budget, them running around the streets of Paris, just trying to make this gritty little noir film that went on to become a huge success around the world. And while it did stir some controversy, especially being directed by a blacklisted director, it still had a very big impact, and the impact it's had on the heist genre and the noir genre can still be felt to this day, and it can be linked straight back to this film. And so to get more into what it's about, Rififi follows this ex-convict. His name is Tony Le Stéphanois, who is this ex-convict who gets out of jail for 5 years and is sort of living this life of poverty, within sort of the underbelly of Paris. But he's really well known for being really good at heists, being this sort of tough guy that you don't mess with. And so he's recruited by some other fellow criminals and other people in this underground world to pull off the heist of the century, where they're going to steal jewels from a jewelry shop. And a heist that begins pretty simple as just breaking the window, grabbing the jewels, and run, becomes this way more elaborate and involved heist in order to steal from the safe within this jewelry store. And the movie, the first half, follows the planning of the heist, figuring out how to do it, how they're going to even figuring out all the different spots, trying to figure out the schedules of everybody around the shop, figuring out how to get around security, just this whole involved process until we get to the actual heist, which is one of the most important and iconic moments in the film, which is, I believe, 45 minutes, a very long segment of the film with no dialogue, no music. It's entirely just sound effects and Foley, as you see these criminals performing almost in a workman-like fashion, pulling off this heist. And I guess we can start there with the most iconic moment. That heist is simply incredible and is almost worth watching the movie just for that scene. It's a masterclass in suspense, in visual storytelling, and what works so well about it is we've spent so long watching them develop this plan, seeing them sort of we see them on the streets figuring out all the different schedules. We see there's a great sequence of them figuring out how to turn off the security system, which seems almost airtight, so that when they do execute it, we understand how difficult it's going to be, even if we don't understand every single step of the plan. So when they are performing it, it's kind of it's almost like a magic trick, it's this feat to watch. I mean, it's sort of, I feel like it's the same satisfaction people get, watching construction builders, or maybe like those shows where they show you how products are made, where you're just seeing the precision and you're seeing people who are at the top of their game, who are masters of their craft, just pulling off some incredible, impossible stuff. It's really a wonderful, fantastic sequence that is, again, almost worth watching the movie for in general. To continue praising it, the cinematography of the film is absolutely gorgeous. Dassin and his team made a very smart, conscious choice, which was to shoot the film only whenever it was cloudy outside or at night, which gives the movie this very gray, dour sort of, this coldness to it, this callousness, which sort of reflects the world that these people live in, especially Tony, and sort of reflecting how unforgiving and unloving this criminal underlife can be. And that itself is a major theme of the movie. And it took me a while to realize that when I first saw this movie, when I first got it, which again was an early Criterion. I was very excited because I love the idea of a heist movie. But one thing that always threw me off was a scene early on where Tony goes to this cabaret club and meets up with this old girlfriend of his that left him once he went to jail because he's in jail. And he takes this very aggressive, very gross, possessive liking to her, and essentially forces her to come back to his shitty apartment and forces her to strip and beat her. And while it isn't an explicitly violent scene, nothing is really shown, the implications and the sounds and the way it's framed and presented is pretty shocking and disturbing, to the point where I just really hate this character and don't really want to see him succeed or, accomplish anything. And it took me a while to realize that, we're not supposed to like him, and that's sort of the point, and how the film itself is about how unforgiving and unrelenting this criminal life is. And that can be seen in the title of Rififi, which there's a great sequence, which I've been showing in the back here, where they perform this song called Rififi, which is all about, it's this beautiful femme fatale type figure singing the song, where she is talking about this glamorized, idyllic man she's with who always gets into Rififi, which Rififi essentially stands for like a ruckus or a fight or just like roughhousing, anything like that. So this guy she's talking about is always getting into fights, always shooting people. They even say like, he can't go 5 minutes without beating her, and yet there's this excitement, this thrill to it. It's not presented as anything negative or as anything bad, but sort of exotic or like, taboo almost. There's this underlining admiration of it, this romanticization of this type of person and this type of life. But the film, through the opening and especially through the final act of the film, shows how unglamorous this life is. Tony lives in squalor. He lives in this terrible apartment, and there's a great sequence before the heist where they show everybody sort of saying their goodbyes, saying their farewells before they perform the heist, and Tony's still alone in his apartment. He doesn't have anything. He's poor, he's mean, he's grumpy, he's just a horrible person to be around, quite honestly. And then once they perform the heist, as you can tell from any heist movie, everything just goes down the drain immediately. Everything just goes terrible, and the repercussions are, either exile or death. There's no happy ending for anybody in this film. And I think that's one thing I really enjoy about it, is how sort of gross and seedy everything is. And especially how effective it can be. It's a movie made 50 years ago, 60 years ago, I guess at this point. And it's still so effective. It's still so, in the essay here, included with the disc, written by Jay Hoberman, he discusses how critics talked about how they could smell, the underground world of Paris. And I feel that. They really do capture that sort of gross seediness, which makes it just a visually striking, fascinating movie. And I think the central theme of tearing down, presenting the dangers of this toxic masculinity, the dangers of this world, it's simply fascinating. And while it may not always work for me, I think the intention is there and is done fairly well overall. So to get more into the technical aspects of Rififi, the camera work itself is fantastic. The camera sort of flows and moves and sort of, I don't know, there's so many fantastic shots that are still impressive today. I specifically think about the final moment in the film, the final chase, I guess, which has fantastic camera work and editing and performances that captures the frantic nature of this scene and of this moment, and it's extremely engaging and tense. I was almost literally on the edge of my seat during this moment, despite not really liking this character. There's a lot of impressionistic imagery. There's a great sequence that I think is referenced a lot, where Tony goes behind the stage of the club where one of the heist team members is tied up, which is simply fantastic. It's just so well done. The lighting is great. I mean, just some fantastic noir imagery, and this was one of the progenitors for the term noir. And it's simply beautiful. It's fantastic. And the main performances are great. I love the main actor as Tony. What is his name? Jean Servais. He's fantastic in the role. It's great to see this older, grizzled character played, accurately by that actor. And even though I dislike him a lot, he's still effective. He's still this presence that I enjoy seeing on screen. Yeah, I think that's all I really have to say about the movie itself. It's a very fascinating movie, a very important part of film history. And I mean, if you're into heist movies and noir films, it's foundational. It's very important, and luckily it still holds up, in my opinion. I think it's still a very effective movie that has dated at points, of course, but overall I think it's well worth the watch, well worth your time. And as a release, this Criterion edition is a little light on special features. Really, the main thing it has is this interview with the director, Jules Dassin, from the early 2000s, probably for the DVD release, talking specifically about sort of this time in his life where he was blacklisted, sort of his career in Hollywood, to being blacklisted, going to Europe, and then getting the chance to make this movie. And then talking about stories on the set and how everything was made. And it's super in-depth and fascinating, and gives a really interesting look into Dassin's mindset while he was making the movie, and what he was trying to achieve, and sort of just into him as well as a person, as a creative. It's very fascinating, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And again, worth buying the disc just for that and the movie, honestly. But then you also get the essay from Jay Hoberman, which does another great job of giving more context to the film. Specifically, I really enjoyed the way it sort of puts it in context before the production and then the release. It's talking about how much of a success it was, sort of the controversy it faced, and in general, it's a really interesting short read that again just heightens the value of this release. If you get a chance, check out Rififi. It's really well made. If you love noir films or want to get more into them, this is a fantastic place to start, I feel like. Or if you like heist movies, great place to go. But thank you all so much for watching. Next time, we're going to be talking about one of Hitchcock's first American productions, and in fact, the film that won him an Oscar, one of the only Oscars he's ever received, for Rebecca. But hope to see you guys next time, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe and leave a comment and share it around. But either way, hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.